advised to call 111 early.
When it strikes, it can be devastating. So when it comes to bacterial meningitis, which is what we're talking about today, around about 1 in 10 people affected may die, and the disease can kill people within 24 hours or less. So it is a devastating illness, and one which ideally we would seek to prevent through vaccines.
Vaccines reduce the risk. Routine immunisation against the most common strain, meningitis B, are offered to babies and toddlers. Teenagers are offered jabs against other strains causing meningitis. They've been successful, reducing overall rates. However, after a huge drop in cases due to less mixing during the pandemic, meningitis is on the rise again. And worryingly, vaccination rates have fallen, particularly among teenagers, from close to 90% before the pandemic to nearer 70% now. If you missed out, catch-up doses are available on the NHS for anyone under 25. Protection isn't perfect, though. Public health officials urging those in the area to be vigilant for symptoms, especially in young people, but stress the risk to the wider public is low.
Harper, who is following this story for us from Canterbury tonight. And Amelia, some specific instructions issued tonight by health officials.
Yeah, look, we've had overall guidance, haven't we, SJ, through the day. 30,000 people in and around Kent have been contacted to keep them informed of the situation. We know that close contacts have been given antibiotics and told to be aware of any symptoms if they start to develop them. But as you say, we have had specific updates tonight from the UK Health Security Agency with regards to a nightclub where they say they've identified some of those cases potentially went to this nightclub. This is a local nightclub called Club Chemistry. And the agency is saying that anyone who visited the club from the 5th, 6th and 7th of March, please come forward for preventative antibiotic treatment as a precautionary measure. And one of those places that they can get them is here on the University of Kent campus. And this is where we've seen university students all day. Hundreds of students that we heard there in Laura's report have been queuing. And I've been here, SJ, throughout the day to kind of see what's been going on. And what I've seen is lots of students around, all of them wearing masks. It's taking me a little bit back to COVID times. And they were all queuing outside of the building. They were told to give their student accommodation details when they got to the front of the queue. And also it's worth bearing in mind that local people have also been told to come here if they've been identified potentially as a close contact of someone who has signs or symptoms of meningitis and septicemia. And security here were giving out masks on the door, and they were being pointed towards QR codes where they could look at the side effects of the antibiotic. But I suppose where we're at tonight, really, SJ, is the news that 3 schools have now confirmed cases of meningitis, as well as one being here. Those 3 schools are Barton Court Grammar School, Queen Elizabeth Grammar School and Norton Knatchbull School. And of course, we have been saying throughout the day about those 2 absolutely tragic deaths of students, one, of course, being here at the University of Kent and another one, a Year 13 pupil called Juliet at Queen Elizabeth's Grammar School in Faversham. And tonight, SJ, her parents have come out and said that they are absolutely devastated.
Amelia, thank you so much, Amelia, across events in Canterbury for us tonight. Let's speak now to Lyndon Camparan, the leader of Kent County Council. Really good of you to join us on the programme tonight after what I am sure has been an extremely busy day for you today.
It really has been very busy, but I'd just like to start by offering our condolences to the parents of the 2 young people who have sadly lost their lives in this meningitis outbreak. It's absolutely heartbreaking, and I'm a parent myself. My children are the same ages as the 21-year-old and the 18-year-old who have died. And, you send your children off to university or out in the wider world, and you think as a parent, you've got them to that age. They're adults and they should be doing all right. And then something like this comes out of the blue, and I can only imagine the distress that the families are going through tonight. But you're right, it has been a very busy day here at Kent County Council. We are working, my Director of Public Health is working very closely with the UK Health and Security Agency. He has been in briefings all day He's been briefing me at regular intervals. It is a fast-moving situation. I was just watching your excellent reporting there, which has actually filled me in on a few details that I've just come out of another meeting that I wasn't aware of. It's one of those situations that is rapidly changing, sort of hour by hour. So, yeah, we're trying to monitor it as carefully as we can, obviously in conjunction with the UK Health and Security Agency. It's not great.
Yeah, the spread of meningitis can be rapid, so it's important that the reaction to it is rapid as well, to save lives. 2 lives, as you said, lost already, and of course our thoughts are with those families. Another 11 young people are seriously ill in hospital tonight. What are the plans for the coming days? We saw those huge queues on university campuses for people to come forward for preventative treatment, because, of course, that is the concern. The numbers here, it's estimated that 2,000 young people could be affected. Such is the rate of spread of this.
Yes, it is a transmissible disease. My Director of Public Health said it is not as contagious as COVID was. It's caught by very close contact. That either means kissing somebody or sharing utensils, or maybe coughing, droplets out into the air that somebody next to you might breathe in. That is how it is spread. So, of course, all those students who live very closely in halls of residence, it's been traced back to a nightclub in Canterbury. All those people are now being reached out to. They are being offered preventative antibiotics if they're not yet showing symptoms. But my Director of Public Health was very clear today. He said what the emphasis is now on is finding out which particular strain of meningitis it is. There are several different strains. The testing is ongoing. That's the key bit, really, because once we understand the particular strain, then we can offer antibiotics in a preventative manner to stop anybody catching it who might have been exposed to it. But really now the focus is on communication. It's getting the message out to all those young people, where they need to go, what they need to do. We've set up 4 hubs where people can go and get antibiotics, even if they're not displaying symptoms. But really my message to anyone today is please keep an eye on yourself and keep an eye on your friends. If you experience any of the symptoms associated with meningitis, such as a headache, feeling confused, if your breathing is rapid, the rash is particularly a symptom to look out for. Often a rash is displayed on the skin, and if you get a glass tumbler and press it against your skin, and if that rash doesn't disappear, that is a pretty good sign. It probably is meningitis. So the advice is don't try and get a GP's appointment, don't hang about, get yourself straight to A&E, because this does not have to be disastrous. If it's caught early enough and treated with the right antibiotics, there is a very good chance of survival and recovery.
Yeah, time is of the essence, because as we know, or, as we remind people this evening, the early signs of meningitis can, as with so many illnesses, present themselves with being run down, getting the start of a cold, being hungover. So, it's important to listen to the messaging, and if you are in and around the Canterbury area. In terms of mapping this, obviously we're looking at a particular nightclub in Canterbury. We now know that pupils at specific schools have been affected, and the university as well. How much do you at the local council keep an eye on the map of this? Because the concern is spread. As you said, it's not like COVID, it's not as easily transmittable, but it is still transmissible. What's it like mapping the spread of this?
I mean, mapping is something that is ongoing. So that's all I can really say about that at the moment. Yeah. But obviously we need to know how this is spreading and where it is spreading to, because you're right, the outbreak was traced to one nightclub, but of course we're now hearing that school pupils have been affected. But I think the problem is, because it was this weekend just got
Oh, apologies about that. We've just lost the leader of Kent County Council, Lyndon Kemcaran, but we did get the main bulk of what she was saying there. Let's move on to Dr. Bharat Pankania, who is a senior clinical lecturer in public health medicine at the University of Exeter and joins us now. Doctor, really good to see you this evening. You'll have been following developments today closely. How unusual is this?
It's unusual in that we have so many cases in a given place, time, and persons. Usually we have 2, maybe 3, but to have 11 plus and unfortunately also 2 deaths, that's very unusual. So yesterday when I was talking to LBC News, I said, this looks like a super spreader event, something that may happen in a nightclub-like setting. And indeed, today we find that, of course, the focus may be club chemistry, where the exact parameters are there: loud music, loud voice, crowded place, poorly ventilated. Somebody is throwing out meningococcus bacteria, and the rest happened.
Yeah, that nightclub getting a lot of attention, but I think it's important to point out that venue won't be an infection hotspot. This
Correct.
is transmitted from human to human, not
Correct.
from a venue.
Correct.
And in terms of trying to identify the exact strain, that hasn't been discovered yet. We do know it's bacterial meningitis. How important is it to identify the specific strain when it comes to treatment?
Well, with regard to treatment, we go in straight away with treatment because time is of the essence, and we usually give an antibiotic called ciprofloxacin to the close contacts of the cases. So we're not beholden to, I need to know what the strain is. However, we will know what the strain is in good time because there are microbiological techniques involved in establishing what strain it is. And then if it is a strain against which you can immunize, you can also give the vaccine afterwards.
If in doubt, should people just seek preventative treatment?
We only want to be giving out antibiotics to close contacts in this place and of those cases. We don't want general dishing out of antibiotics. That would be a very wrong thing to do. So whenever we have a situation like this, what we do is we work very closely with the cases, identify who their close contacts were, and then give to the close contacts the antibiotics. In this case, unfortunately, a large number of people linked to that place in time and persons will be given antibiotics. But I must emphasize that just taking the antibiotics is not the end of the matter. One must always be watchful for signs and symptoms of a meningococcal infection, even if you have been given what we call that prophylactic antibiotic, because it's good to be watchful. This is not a treatment dose, this is a prophylactic dose.
So it's important to be vigilant even if you are taking the antibiotics. In terms of those most at risk, why is it young people are most at risk from this? It's
more a case of behaviors and, the socialization that they do. So somebody somewhere is probably carrying the meningococcus bacteria at the back of their throat, and then they are perfectly okay, but they are able to transmit it to others. The others pick it up, and in them, it becomes invasive disease. That's how it works. So for children, we immunize them with meningococcus B vaccine. And then for new university entrants, we always advise that please have your ACWY strain vaccine before you come to university. So the vaccines which the United Kingdom have deployed, B for little children, little babies, and ACWY for young university entrants, do keep case numbers down, and we see a lot less now that we've been immunizing.
Yeah, is that perhaps the concern there, that, there is vaccine hesitancy, and there has been since COVID?
Yes, but to be honest with you, with regard to uptake of the ACWY for university entrants, it's pretty good. Of course, we can do better, but in this case, we don't even know what the strain is at the moment, and time will tell. In a couple of days' time, we will know. But my advice always is prevention is the best possible medicine you can have. And therefore, being up to date with your childhood vaccines and being up to date if you're at university with the offered vaccine ACWY is a very good precautionary measure to take.
Dr. Bharat Pankania, really good to talk to you about this story. Senior clinical lecturer at the University of Exeter there. Appreciate your time this evening. Thanks so much.
You're welcome.
Still to come on the UK Tonight. A nursery worker is sentenced to 24 years in prison for sexually abusing toddlers in his care. And the Prime Minister insists the UK will not be dragged into a wider war over Iran. A really horrifying story now. A nursery worker who raped toddlers in his care was today sentenced to 24 years in prison. 30-year-old Nathan Bennett was described as a parent's worst nightmare and an incorrigible and dangerous paedophile. The parents of some of his victims told the court Bennett has destroyed their lives. Dan Whitehead reports now, and just to warn you, you will find this story distressing.
Did you join to be a nursery worker so that you could have access to children?
In what way?
In a sexual way?
Yeah.
He was described by the judge as an evil and dangerous paedophile. Nathan Bennett used his position of power at this nursery in Bristol to rape and sexually abuse 5 boys. They were just 2 and 3 years old.
Nathan Bennett is a predatory paedophile who groomed children in order to commit vile sexual crimes on very young victims. By refusing to plead guilty and admit to carrying out the most serious sexual offences, he extended the trauma of those families by putting them through a trial, in which a substantial amount of distressing evidence was read out to the court and the jury.
Based on an allegation we've received today, I'm arresting on suspicion of sexual assault of a child.
Bennett was arrested at his home near Bath in February last year. It came after CCTV footage from inside Pardew King Street Nursery had shown him placing his hands down a toddler's trousers. During the trial, the jury heard how staff here had noted that Bennett would sit children on his lap for lengthy periods of time, that he wore a pair of trousers with a hole in the crotch area, and that he'd become territorial over certain toddlers and their parents. Much of the evidence is too horrific to report, but the court did hear video interviews from 2 of the toddlers abused. In victim statements read out in court today, parents described their overwhelming guilt and anger and the indescribable pain at knowing their child was involved. The father of a child who was not one of the 5 boys in this case, but was in the care of Bennett, spoke to Sky News. We've changed his voice to protect his identity.
It was horrifying. You'd think that this can only happen in TV shows and films and to other people. And I never thought that I would be in a situation where my children have been looked after by someone who's actively taking part in such horrific things. I felt sick and ill. I felt like I'd known earlier, would have acted differently. There's a childcare app that we get updates on throughout the day, like what they've had for lunch and things like that, and when they've had their nappies changed, just so we can keep track of what's going on, and going back and seeing messages from Nathan saying he's changed their nappy, applied nappy cream. It's things like that that now seeing it through a whole new perspective, it just makes you feel sick to think there's been anywhere near her.
The nursery was shut down in December last year. Sentencing Bennett to 24 years in jail, the judge said he'd prioritised his own sexual satisfaction over the welfare of these little children, polluting their innocence with his own vile desires. Dan Whitehead, Sky News in Bristol.
Now, the Prime Minister has insisted Britain won't be drawn into the wider Iran war, despite pressure to send Royal Navy ships to reopen the Strait of Hormuz. Sir Keir Starmer refusing to commit forces, despite President Trump saying he's not happy with the UK for refusing to support his mission.
Our priority is always the national interest. And so we have been clear and consistent in our objectives throughout this conflict. First, we will protect our people in the region. Second, while taking the necessary action to defend ourselves and our allies, we will not be drawn into the wider war.
We requested 2 aircraft carriers, which they had, and he didn't really want to do it. And then right after the war essentially ended, meaning they were obliterated, he said, I would like to send the aircraft carriers. I said, I don't need them after the war has ended and won. I need it before the war. So I was very upset with, not upset, I was not happy with the UK. I think they'll be involved, yeah, maybe. But they should be involved enthusiastically. We've been protecting these countries for years with NATO.
Meanwhile, Iran's Deputy Foreign Minister has told Sky News that the United States faces another Vietnam if it puts boots on the ground in his country. He also said Iran is ready to fight for as long as it takes. Dr. Saeed Khatibzadeh was speaking to Sky's Dominic Waghorn, the only British broadcaster reporting on the war from inside Iran.
There's a lot of concern that the next move for your enemies is putting boots on the ground, maybe taking Hague Island, that very important oil terminal. If they do that, then they have your economy by the throat, don't they? Then they could destroy your government's ability to keep its grip on power.
Look, even suggesting that a foreign country can put boots on the ground of another country, invade another country, occupy the land of another country, is something very much rogue, very reckless, illegal, and against all international law. There is no mandate for Americans to do that, and they are doing this because they are so drunk of power. They think that they can do whatever they want, and this is not the case.
There are thousands of US Marines on the way. What happens if they get used, do you think?
We defend.
What does that mean, though, for these Marines if they were to land in Hague Island?
Just read what happened in Vietnam.
And you can see that interview in full with Dominic Waghorn at 9 o'clock on The World. So to come here on the UK Tonight, I've sat down with the MP Naz Shah to discuss her extraordinarily, scarcely believable new memoir. That's on the way. Now, it's being described as the most extraordinary and thought-provoking memoir by any Member of Parliament in recent times. Naz Shah's life story is scarcely believable. A father who beat her mother before running away with a teenage neighbour, and another man who Naz knew as uncle became so abusive and such a threat to her and her siblings that her mum killed him. Her mother was a young woman trapped by the South Asian concept of izzat, or honour, and her attempt to regain her honour had terrible repercussions. Now, the MP for Bradford West has told her family's story in her book Honoured, and I've been speaking to her about her decision to share a story so personal and brutal.
My first memory was of my dad beating my mum. That was my very first memory, and it was, we lived in Anvil Street, which is like in Yorkshire stone houses. The basement was where we lived, there was a main living room, and running up them stairs and running up another set of stairs to get the neighbour, because mum said go and get somebody to come and stop him. So it was my mum looking at me, asking for help, and me going and getting the neighbours to come and help. And that was my very, very first memory, the most vivid memory that I have.
Mm. That was your earliest memory, and you were actually shielded by it.
Yeah.
By your mother because of izzat, or honour, which within Pakistani culture is prevalent, which means that, you know, honour is everything, and it's protected by men and the community, and it is the women in the family that feel the shame.
Absolutely. You've nailed it. It's just literally... It's like Giselle Pellicote was talking about, you know, we need to flip for shame. Mm. It's exactly the same concept. So the idea is that the women bear the burden of shame, and when men bask in honour, it's never... So even though it was my father that left my mother, it was my mother that was shamed. Mm. Even though it's men that commit, you know, do the things, it's the women that pay the price for it. And that's that kind of really, really entrenched patriarchal notion of that men protect honour. You know, when we talk about honour killings, yes, that the idea that a man can kill a woman because she's brought disrepute to the family, or the family, you know, name it through mud because she's dared to do something which is dishonourable. So, you know, and yet men can make mistakes, and it's never them that that are dishonoured. It really is. It's very. It's not okay.
Even for your mum to speak out about what was happening to her would have brought shame on the family and upset that notion of izzat, which is why you didn't know so much about what had happened until your mum until you were older. Your father, as you said, left. He abandoned the family. He left with a 16-year-old neighbour, and you would think that that would be the start of healing and recovery for your mum and your family, with better times to come. But actually, because of the shame, circumstances actually got worse for your mother and your family. Talk to me about
So you have a 23-year-old with 3 young children, a baby, a 6-7-year-old and a 4-year-old, and a newborn, and then you're exploited sexually. Now we understand, you know, the vulnerability of that woman. If you picture a 23-year-old in a country that isn't where she's been born, doesn't understand the language, with 3 kids, living in rented accommodation, living in abject poverty.
Totally isolated by her circumstances.
2 of her children have TB. And then a man comes along, you know, gives her fruit for the kids and shows her, you know, to us the knight in shining armour, if you like, and actually is a drug trafficker who agrees to buy this house, and she pays the money for the deposit because she can't get a mortgage, but she wants security for her kids. And then he sexually abuses her and exploits her for years and years and years. Then her daughter turns 12 and he's got, you know, designs, she sees it as designs on her daughter. So she sends me to Pakistan. I have a forced marriage at 15. Then when my sister's growing up, he has designed, well, you know, the grass is greener with her. And then she snaps and she gives him a fatal dose of arsenic and he dies. And then she gets, you know, sentenced to 20 years in prison because she's seen as a woman who was just trying to have this house rather than the destitute, desperate woman that she actually was at the time. And she doesn't tell the story because the concept of honour in the community, what the chances for her children after that, it brings the whole issue, you know, the community, the wider family into disrepute. And it doesn't matter that the family abandoned her, she still carries that burden of protecting that izzat and never tells the truth about her trauma. And then when she finally does tell the truth of trauma, the appeal is rejected by men who are just so disconnected. You've got upper class 3 judges who don't believe her, and say she's incapable of belief because they just can't get their head round the concept of that cultural element of what impacted her.
She said part of her sentence, alongside the likes of Rosemary West and Myra Hindley. This is Zura, still a young woman, a victim of rape and violence, who could see no other way out than to end the life of her abuser before he ended hers. It was an act of desperate self-defence. She did kill a man, you know, let's be clear about that. But for you, it highlighted inequality in the justice system, a lack of understanding about what survivors of abuse go through.
Absolutely. So in them days, when I was really politicised throughout the campaign, was realising that a woman could kill a man after being battered for 20 years and one day snap and she might end up killing him and she would be lifed off with a life term and convicted for murder, whereas a man could beat a woman for 20 years and eventually kill her and he could walk away with manslaughter. And there were cases where men could say, well, she was nagging me, and the judges at the time were like, oh, well, she was nagging him. You know, the inequality of women in the justice system, and there are still organisations that work for women who are in prison, who have been driven to kill, who have killed as a result of domestic violence and abuse. So there are still things that we need to change. But from my mother's perspective, the whole concept of honour was the thing that held her back. And I remember the foreman of the jury at the time saying, once he learnt about her story, he said, had I known about this, then potentially I wouldn't have found her guilty for murder.
How does she feel about you telling her story, and what does she want you to do with it? Because I understand that you've never spoken to her directly about the abuse that she suffered at the hands of your father and then her partner afterwards, the man you called Uncle Azam. You heard about it all through campaigners who talked to her to help her. How does she feel about her story being?
So I spoke to her this morning because obviously she watched for telly yesterday and saw me, and I did ask her how is she, and she's okay. I can't imagine I'm not brave enough to have that conversation. We kind of like don't have that direct conversation, but we acknowledge each other. I acknowledge her pain. She knows I've acknowledged that through the book. I acknowledge how difficult it has been. But then there's another thing in all of this, which is the mental health side of things and the language. We don't even have a language. We don't even have a word for depression. I used to chair a mental health charity. We don't even have the language to articulate the concept of trauma, depression, mental health for South Asian women. And that's a really, really big thing because, and I've spoken to my doctor and he said, I've got women who come in here in their 40s, 50s and 60s, and there's something going on. It manifests in their health, but they don't articulate it and they don't talk about it. So I'm hoping, for me, this book has lots and lots of, things that I want out of it. One is to start conversations about mental health, about trauma, about women in prison, about children, all of these things. And the biggest thing for me is, coming back from all of that in terms of societal change and having a conversation is about somebody looking at this and saying, well, if she can do it, I can do it. So that if she can talk about it, and that's lots of layers. That's about, well, if she can talk about it so openly, I can talk about it. To empower others, to give, sometimes you need, it's like role modelling and being able to see somebody who looks like you on the TV and saying, well, if she can do it, I can do it.
Naz Shah MP talking about her memoir, Honoured. We're going to take you to the Oval Office now. This has just come in from President Trump. He's been speaking about Sir Keir Starmer continuing his criticism of the UK and its lack of involvement, as he perceives it, in the war against Iran.
There are some countries that greatly disappointed me. And, I'm the one that got them to pay from 2% to 5% of GDP, NATO. And I get along great with those countries in NATO, but I always said, the problem with NATO is we'll always be there for them, but they'll never be there for us. And when I hear the UK, which was sort of considered the Rolls-Royce of allies, right? Wouldn't you say? They were the oldest and they were going to be there. And I say it would be really helpful if you'd send over a couple of ships, and if you have some minesweepers, which they do, it'd be very helpful. And the Prime Minister's a nice man. I think he's a very nice guy. He says, well, I'd like to ask my team. I said, you don't have to worry about a team. You don't have a team. You're the Prime Minister. You can make a decision. Well, I have to speak to my people. I said, you don't have to speak to anybody. So it's very disappointing. And then after we obliterated them and destroyed their military, the whole thing, and it became a much safer zone, he said, we're going to send over 2 aircraft carriers. I said, I don't want them anymore. I don't want them after we win. I want them before we start. I don't need your aircraft carriers after we've already won. So, you know, those things are very disappointing. And you have to remember, we have 45,000 troops in Japan. We have 45,000 troops in South Korea. We have 45,000, 50,000 troops in Germany. We defend all these countries. And then, do you have any minesweepers? And they say, well, would it be possible for us not to get involved? I've been saying it for a long time. This is the greatest thing to come out of this. We spend trillions and trillions of dollars on NATO to defend other countries. And I always said, but if it ever comes time to defend us, they're not going to be there. Many of them would not be there. And we're going to have to start thinking more wisely in this country. Some have been very good. 1 or 2 have been great. I'll tell you, the great ones are at the right time. But there have been some that were right up there, Peter. They were right up there. They wanted to do it so much. Go ahead, Peter.
Thank you.
President Trump there renewing his criticism of Sir Keir Starmer within the last few minutes in Washington. More on that in the world that follows us here at 9 o'clock. So to come on the UK tonight, I'll be speaking to the family of actor Jessie Buckley, who's been celebrating her big win at the Oscars. And I'll tell you why Chelsea Football Club has been fined almost £11 million by the Premier League. Details on the way.
I'm Deborah Haynes, Sky Security and Defence Editor. The reality of life under Russian fire. People don't want to leave, even though help is here to evacuate them. They say they want to sort out their belongings first. It's absolute chaos. Fire, shouts the commander. There's a dash to safety, as Russian drones will be trying to find this position.
We've now got to wait inside the shelter to see if there is incoming.
I've been covering Russia's full-scale war since it began, witnessing the terror and the trauma.
When rockets fall, I try to hide my head under my toys.
Illustrating Ukraine's lost childhood, hopes and dreams framed by war. Conflict in the Middle East is another major focus.
An incredibly dangerous moment.
We saw the missiles streaking across the sky. We saw the intercept going up, and then we saw the explosions when the intercepts were successful.
With global threats rising, I also explore defence and security in the UK and across NATO. This US aircraft carrier is operating in European waters in a deliberate show of force. This is routine training for NATO, but should Russia's war with Ukraine escalate significantly, pilots like these could be called upon to go into combat for real. Tucked away in the National Archives are some of the UK's old defence plans. The scale of this bunker underlines how seriously governments took the threat of nuclear attack and global conflict. Should allies listen to Vladimir Putin's sabre-rattling?
No, they shouldn't, and they don't.
Sky News, the full story first.
Liberation Day.
By popular demand, here we are.
Donald Trump. It is quite the story. Wherever it goes, on Trump 100, we go with it.
Can you tell us who you're looking for? Unbelievable we've come to this.
Are you overstating the reach and significance of this deal?
Not like you said it.
From the UK?
Why don't you go back to your country where you have a major migrant problem?
It was 10 feet from him, and all of a sudden the shot's running out.
People impacted.
I'll tell you on another day on the podcast what that was all about.
Join us wherever you get your podcast.
Coming up shortly, I'll be speaking to the cousin of the Oscar-winning actress Jessie Buckley to find out how the family have been celebrating her big win. But before that, we're going to talk sport. And Chelsea in the headlines today. Chelsea Football Club fined almost £11 million. This is over secret payments relating to the transfer of players under former owner Roman Abramovich. Our sports correspondent Rob Harris joins me now with the details on this. So £11 million. Talk to me about the fine, the scale of it, what it means.
It's a record Premier League fine. The largest previously was just over 5 million for West Ham almost 20 years ago, and it just shows the scale of this case. Thousands of documents Chelsea handed over. There were documents uncovered when the club had to sell up, when Abramovich was forced to sell, when they were sanctioned after the all-out war on Ukraine by Russia, and he was one of the oligarchs swept up in the sanctioning. The new ownership in the due diligence spotted these irregularities on payments relating to players.
Yeah, so what were the irregularities? We've called them secret payments. What exactly was going on?
Well, £47.5 million of payments to 7 named players people will know well: Eden Hazard, David Luiz, Willian, and these were payments described as being illicit. They were deception and concealment in relation to financial matters, and they were to unlicensed agents and to others.
Like sweeteners, if you like.
Yeah,
these
were off-the-book payments. Now, they related to a period from 2011 to 2018, when they had such success, winning the Premier League, the Champions League, the League Cup, the FA Cup, all these trophies that they won with some of these players at the heart of the success, players that had these financial matters that were part of deception and concealment.
Yeah, I mean, so many people will be following this story today and saying, you know, £11 million, that's not a lot of money to Chelsea. What really would have made an impact and punished them properly was points deduction, but we've not seen that. Why?
And they don't need to pay the fine themselves, because as part of the £2.5 billion sale enforced on Abramovich, there was £150 million set aside to deal with these investigations ongoing. They've already had to pay €10 million to UEFA as well. Well, the fine would have doubled had Chelsea not cooperated. They talked about an unprecedented level of cooperation. Also, had they not been so willing to hand over information, they'd have had an immediate one-year transfer ban rather than one that is frozen for 2 years, unless there's any further wrongdoing. Now, it does raise questions about why there are no sporting sanctions, given the fact that these players helped them to deliver success, and Everton, Nottingham Forest have faced financial points deductions for breaching profit and sustainability rules. The Premier League are saying these payments, if they had been from Chelsea rather than off the book, would still not have seen Chelsea breach the profit and sustainability rules. But, of course, some of these players helped to win a load of prize money as well.
Just got time, we're very short on time, but I do want to mention the fact that we still haven't got a decision about Manchester City. Yes,
this is the biggest Premier League investigation. 130 charges of alleged financial wrongdoing, including non-cooperation, which City do deny. Dates back to 2018, the first allegations. The hearing finished in 2024. We're still awaiting 15 months on. What does this show us, this case? Well, potentially, even if you haven't cooperated, you still might avoid a points deduction. But no end in sight for that at the moment.
No, it continues. I know you'll be following it closely for some time. Yeah, Rob, thank you. Rob Harris there, our sports correspondent. Let's get a look at the rest of the day's sports news now with David.
Adding a continental touch to Arsenal's never say die style is what Wenger is promising.
Quand je suis venu, je veux dire, il y a tout ce qu'il faut pour être un grand club. Je veux dire, ils ont un public qui est fabuleux. Je veux dire, il y a des terrains où on peut s'entraîner. Il y a un entourage qui est très bien. Je veux dire, ils ont des très bonnes structures.
I think it was a big chance for Arsenal to take this player because I believe he has a great future.
He knew he had to get those kind of players that will know his philosophy and will help him implement that philosophy on the pitch at Arsenal. If you want to change the mentality at Arsenal, you don't go and sign English players.
It didn't have as big an effect as when we signed Dennis Bergkamp. That was like a massive statement. When Patrick signed, these are players that nobody's really heard of.
I was happy to have the chance to sign him. And overall, Patrick Vieira landed at Arsenal, but nobody knew that I was the manager. So at the start, he didn't play.
So actually Remy Gard came in at the same time. Remy was an accomplished player, but also I think to give Patrick comfort that he wasn't alone, he wasn't the only French guy in the dressing room. So, and I think that worked well. Remy was a little bit more of a mature player than Patrick.
Remy was great for Patrick because Remy spoke English.
Well, Well, it's been a day of celebration for the family of Jessie Buckley, the Irish actress, stamping her mark on the world stage, making history by becoming the first Irish woman to win the Academy Award for Best Lead Actress.
Is it true? You know everything about a person by touching them here?
Not everything.
Well, Buckley won it for her role in Hamnet, the fictional story of Shakespeare's wife Agnes, played by Jessie, and how the death of their son inspires the play Hamlet. Jessie's friends and family dressed in black tie in the early hours to watch the Oscars at a pub in Killarney. And here's the moment she was announced as the winner. Oh, what a proud bunch indeed. I'm very pleased to say that Jessie's cousin Brendan Fuller joins me now from Killarney. How's the head? Full house in the pub to watch Jessie's big win?
Yeah, the head is surprisingly okay because I knew I was scheduled for about 1,001 interviews the following morning, so I had a sensible head on me for once last night. But as you saw there, I mean, the party, the moment, I mean, look, we were in Jessie Buckley's bar, Buckley's bar, which opened in 1926 as part of the Arbutus Hotel, and so it's the centenary celebration. So I was thinking of our Nana, who we would visit every Sunday, and we'd pop in and we'd hopefully get a 7-up or 2, and there'd be that rotating rota of different cousins, you know, one after the other. You overlap and all have fun and chats and catch up and see what you're, you know, following and pursuing and interested in. And just couldn't help but look at, you know, the name Buckley is above the bar door, and then after that moment there, just 5 or 10 minutes later, that Buckley name was going to be engraved on an Oscar statuette for forever. So it's just unreal how, you know, the small town, southwest of Ireland, you know, so far away from the likes of the West End in London and Broadway and Hollywood. And Jessie, just through sheer grit and determination and passion, she just pursued it. And as she said, her parents kind of gave her the license and the go ahead to chase that dream. And she's been chasing and chasing and chasing. And then last night we all saw her actually catch that dream, which is something that you don't ever hear, even as a saying. So we're still on cloud 209. You know, it's been.
I bet you can't wait to get through the doors of the pub to have a celebration with Killarney. That's going to be quite some party, isn't it? Have you another relative spoken to her yet?
Yeah. So obviously she's over in LA, so you're trying to factor in the time difference, and then she's been, obviously, you know, everybody's sending her a million messages. So I thought the best tactic was, look, I'll leave her off until, you know, she sends a message or whatever. So when she's over closer to our shores, you know, and she's home back there in Norfolk, and she's, you know, going to glide in back here to Kerry. This is a Kerry jersey as well, which our Nana would very much approve of, a huge Gaelic football fan. So you see the green and gold, you think of Jessie and the Oscar gold, you know. So there might be a green jersey on the Oscar for once. So yeah, look, she'll come home, she'll glide in, and it's lovely in Ireland, you know. She kind of gets to come back, and she's from the same town as Michael Fassbender. So we're very much used to you know, giving Michael his kind of space and time. And I hope he knows that we love him, because we kind of ignore him so much. He might say, Jesus, does anyone like me around here? But we do. We love you, Mike, if you're watching. But look, you know, they're able to come home, and you picture this. I mean, look, she's been in a bubble.
Hey, look, it's a small town, but it's big enough for a couple of superstars, right? And an Oscar. I'm sure Jessie will bring the Oscar over the threshold of that pub, and what a night you will have. Brendan, thank you so much for talking to us, and congratulations to the wider Buckley family, because as Jessie herself has pointed out in a number of interviews, it's taken a village to get her that far. Brendan, thank you so much.
Thank you so much for being a Thank you.
Well, it was probably the least surprising Oscar win of the night. If you haven't seen Hamnet, go and watch it. It is incredible, and Jessie's performance is just breathtaking. That is all from the UK tonight. We'll be back tomorrow night at 8. Jonathan Samuels hosting the show tomorrow. Up next, it is The World. Thanks for watching. Yada Hakim is next.
Tonight, Iran warns the US it will face another Vietnam if American ground troops are sent in.
Just read what happened in Vietnam.
You're saying it could be a quagmire for the Americans?
I say that, I hope that, wisdom prevailed.
That's a senior minister speaking exclusively to our international affairs editor, Dominic Waghorn, inside Iran.
The man who lives here doesn't want to talk on camera, but he's told us that when the explosion happened, the blastways filled his apartment with thick dust and smoke and put his wife and daughter both in hospital with broken bones and shrapnel wounds.
Dominic is one of very few international journalists